me and Colin were just talking about it a little earlier, and I think Colin's just going to go because, and we know this, and I think you mentioned in the email, Max, database structuring is by far the probably where most people get caught up in Adalo. And just some tips and tricks around that. Colin is much better at that than I am. So he can just go over some kind of basic things on database structuring, best kind of trades around that. And then I asked him to just go over actions and screens a little bit because people can really get tripped up there as well because there's a lot going on around that. And because I think the tough thing about Adalo is, or we were just kind of talking on this a call earlier, it's very easy to get yourself to a certain point and then you kind of get caught and you're stuck. And so understanding some basic things, but on a more complicated or more advanced level of those basic things, I think really gets you past a lot of those sticking points. So Colin, if you don't mind, just maybe going over databases and I don't know if you want to share your screen or what, but I think database management and structuring is by far the most important thing to know about. So I'll let Colin kind of take it from there.
Amazing. Yeah, that sounds great. Looking forward to it.
Cool. I could share my screen, although if we're going to talk databases, to be honest, there's not a lot that needs to be shown there and visually. It's more just kind of decisions that need to be made. Yeah, where to start? Maybe someone has a direct question for me because like, I guess the thing that trips people the most up about databases is relationships. Most people will come into this app making process with a mindset that a database is like a spreadsheet. To some extent, that is kind of true, but for the most part, it definitely isn't. It's not, a database is not a flat structure. So the main difference is if you think about a spreadsheet, you have an X and a Y, a column and a row. Now, if that column suddenly needed to also have 3 other rows, you now don't have a flat spreadsheet anymore, right? And this is what happens with Airtable. Airtable, people think is a spreadsheet because it behaves and looks like one, but it is essentially a database because you can have those 3 rows inside that single row inside an Airtable. And those are just entities. So that's the most common misconception that I found that people have coming into Adalo or any other no-code tool when trying to set up a database. Now, there's also a lot of things that will help you learn databases. And one of the biggest part about that is what's called cardinality. And these may sound like fancy kind of coding terms, and they definitely are coding terms, but it's something that you need to understand fundamentally in order to know kind of why are you doing the things that you are doing and if it makes sense for when you need to scale that database. Because most structures in a database will work really well for your first part, like and your MVP, but as soon as you start to extend past that, you start to have, okay, but I didn't think about X and Y, and now I need X and Y because client Z is asking for it, and you don't have that. And that's going to end up making your database probably need to be restructured. And that's going to be a nightmare. It's going to be a nightmare for anything, any no-code app you use, any builder that you use, even if you were programming this, that's also going to be a nightmare. So it is definitely worthwhile to spend the extra time to really kind of look at your design, where it would fail, where it's likely to not work well at a later stage, and kind of just prepare for those edge cases in advance, because it's hard to go back from an edge case once it becomes a bit of a more kind of fundamental case for your customers. There are some great YouTube tutorials out there for database design. What I would advise people to look at is one, I think it's by Lucidchart. They have a great YouTube tutorial about what a database design is and how to use what's called an entity relationship diagram, an ERD. This is going to look like it's more information than you might need, but I promise you at a later stage, this is going to come in so much use. And I by no means have a technical background. I'm also not a developer in the slightest. I only build no code stuff. but there is going to be this line that eventually every single one of you is going to cross, and that is where you get into a bit of a low code situation, and you need that knowledge to take it a step further. Adalo itself is not a low code platform. It's just specifically no code, but the knowledge behind the low code is what you really are after. Yeah, that's pretty much the most tips I can give kind of on the fly about databases, but I can happily answer questions about them.
Yeah, if anyone has questions, please just yeah, come with me. It's quite a small group, so hopefully we don't cross wires. But yeah, please just come off mute and ask Colin any questions you have.
Well, Nate and I have that very specific question. I don't know if it's useful or what order we want to take that in. But.
Right. Yeah. So I looked at that video. The structure is fine. Obviously, you already mentioned that that works. But now you've come into that kind of edge case, and that's why I said like these things are going to happen. It's almost inevitable. On the fly, I couldn't kind of redesign that in my head, but like tips and stuff for that is that you probably would want to restructure it so that the programs had a relationship to the user, because then you could filter that program for that user, and then you just need to write a new program and attach it to the user that you need to change it for. That's going to be the most, that's the most fundamental change I could think of, like after watching that video. But if you guys want to reach out to me and share your app, I can also, you know, during the day sometime have another 30-minute conversation with you guys independently and kind of go over that and see what options you have. It's always so much easier to give advice when you actually know the app inside out and every kind of thing that's happening. So if you like walk me through the flow during that call, it's much easier for me to determine kind of what can be done to account for those new workflows.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. It is kind of hard to know without all of the intricacies behind it and everything.
Yeah, because I might make a recommendation that breaks something later, and I don't want to do that.
Right. I guess, so yeah, that would be great. And I guess another question, just more of a general question about databases. I was kind of looking around, and as far as I can tell, there's no way to copy records and duplicate records in Adalo.
That depends. What can you run through a scenario there?
So like you were saying, where you could, write a new program and then attach it to a different user. I was thinking, well, it would be easy enough to just go duplicate whatever record is in that program and then just reassign it to a different user. And I could kind of find a way through downloading the CSV and duplicating the rows, but then it wouldn't save any of the relationship data.
Right. No, you're totally right. We don't have any kind of like that copy function or a paste function or duplicate function or something like that when it comes to the database. There is that one scenario that you said to download the CSV and do it manually. You're going to experience problems with that also because when you download the CSV, it's not going to have many-to-many relationships attached to that, just because of what I was saying earlier, that it's that becomes not a flat document, and that is not really easy to turn into a CSV. There is the other option for using the collections API. So you could do an API call on that specific collection that you wanted to duplicate. You could use filters to narrow it down for which exact one you wanted, or even if you know the ID yourself, maybe that helps too. And then you can use the API again to create a new record in a different collection. Just again, basic API custom action calls. You can make an admin page inside your app to do these things. So if you needed to copy record A from collection B into record A into collection C, that's all possible to do inside the API. That would be my highest recommendation, to just do it directly in the API if you're confident in your ability for APIs. Another way to do it is you could do it in Adalo itself, where you create a list, you filter it down to that exact record that you want, and then you can make an action to create a new record based off the data that you've already pre-filled from that record. into a different collection.
Oh, I see. That's interesting. That's a great idea. Yeah, thanks. I'll look into both of those a little bit more. That was just one of the things I kind of came up on. I could see being useful. So thank you.
Cool. I hope it works out. If not, I'm in the forum.
It looks like David had a question about, you said like adding APIs. I don't know if David, if you want to expand on that at all, or.
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is David Balzer. Just wanted to introduce myself. I currently in an entrepreneurship program in my school, and we were introduced to no code in general. I've gone through a lot of different platforms and found that Adalo happened to be what fit me the best, you know, kind of through ease of use and throughout my limited understanding of things like these. So we just got into, I mean, I've done my own research, you know, looking through Google and stuff like that about APIs in general. And what I found, first of all, I've got the like pro account, which allows me to use APIs. And what I found is that, sorry, what Colin mentioned earlier was that you're going to have to get some way into low coding if you're trying to advance a little bit. So with APIs in general and Adalo, is there any way that, you know, you have any recommendations on how to learn how to use those more, how to incorporate those more on something like that?
Unfortunately, there is no shortcut in this. It's just that case where you're going to have to learn what is an API, what is an API call, what is a response, what is the difference between a post and a get and a put and a patch. There are really great tutorials out there, and like there is moments where you're going to be able to just copy and paste things and it's going to work just fine. Maybe you just update one small field, and then there's going to be cases where you're going to pull your hair out because you think, what the hell, why is this not working? Everything says that it should be. And it's going to be something so simple and fundamental to an API, but something that a developer would just pick up straight away. But because we're not familiar with these things and it's hard for us to translate it into actual non-developer speak, it's basically a lot of trial and error and trying to understand, you know, why did it go wrong, and learning from your mistakes, because that's pretty much been my way for the last sort of year or two, is just making a heap of mistakes, but trying to learn from every single one of them. Why did that not work? And eventually you will build up that knowledge that you'll be able to troubleshoot and debug those things, you know, within a minute or two. But yeah, I mean, I can't recommend enough just to try to take it easy and like take it slowly, but just try to understand what is an API and how do you translate the development language into no code language, because you're going to see those things that will give you an example that will say, oh, here's the curl code that you need. And you're like, what the hell's a curl? I don't know how to use that. But once you start to see those over and over again, and you see what was working from that curl code and what you needed to change for that specific tool, the curl code is going to be an Adalo code for you in your head straight away. As soon as you see it, you're like, okay, this is for that. This is for that. Like the -h, oh, that's a header. Oh, the -q, oh, that's a query parameter. It's all translatable. It just takes time and kind of keep doing it.
Okay. I had another question regarding something that, like, if I was building an app, I know, like you said, it's hard to understand if you don't know what the whole app is, but the data, there is no database of information to go off of. It's strictly user inputted data. It's like the user would be inputting the information to be translated.
Right.
How would I go about using something like that?
So yeah, that's a difficult one. So what, on a technical term, what I've been told by developers is the technical term for this is it's called a variable. So it's something that's not getting stored in a database, but it should be available as something that can be used at that time when you need it. Now, Adalo doesn't actually work with variables. It's one of the things that we need to still kind of complete in our builder. But there are ways that you can get around that, and you can hold information on a screen if you know these tricks. So I don't know all of them myself even still, but like ones that I go to all the time is that if you're using an input field and you want to store it, let's say a value of 2 in there, you can do that, and you can then manipulate other things based off what's inside that input field. And you can also use like transparency or color settings or styling on that input field to make it invisible. Now you can also then use the default value of that input field to come from some other value that's also on the page. So you can start to really pile it up with how many variables are coming into the page and what's actually sitting there. But it all has to kind of happen on screen in Adalo. And my suggestion is to actually do it underneath your screen, so it's not actually affecting any other components that you have in there, like visually, because that can happen, right? Like even if it's invisible, it still means that it's still there. The Adalo builder doesn't know that you've made it invisible and you don't want people to see it. But yeah, that at the moment, that is the only way to kind of manipulate variables on screen if it's not coming from the database.
That's interesting. I've never thought of putting a screen under that's not visible to the user as, as a way to get data back or get information back and forth.
So just to clarify, it wouldn't be its own screen in itself. It would just be components just sitting nested just at the very bottom of the screen so that it's not actually within the bounding box of that screen. It will still act as if it is part of that screen. I'm not sure why. I don't know where the boundaries are, where it stops not being part of that screen. But that is how I've done it in the past.
Okay. All right. Thank you for the help and information.
Good luck.
Who's next?
Hi.
Oh, Dan, I think you're muted. I see you speaking, but you're muted.
Say he is one of the best top laners in the league. I think he's the best weak side.
Pablo, it looks like yeah, go for it. And then
I'll just do a quick question. So hi, I'm Pablo. I'm from Lima, Peru. I learned about Adalo from Twitter. So I'm trying to build like a trips app, but for my local town here in Peru, and I want to create relationship between users for them to, like, for example, I set my availability for the next couple of weeks, and based on that availability that is visible to other users, they can send me invites to create events. So my question is, how, like this, first I will need to have like a friend relationship between users, and then another one for maybe events where they can accept or just accept the request. But my main, like the key feature I want to see if it's possible is how can I match the different like availabilities among users so they can invite each other on trips.
Oof, okay.
Yeah, sorry.
That is actually a very, very complicated setup that has to go on in the background. I do know that we do have some apps. I think I even have one that I've worked on that has similar functionality. Maybe if I could get my hands on one of these and make it a clonable app, then I think it's probably the easiest way for you to learn, actually, because otherwise we'd spend the next 30 minutes talking about this. If I can get you a clonable where you can use it as a template and then you can kind of dig around there and nitpick and try to understand, okay, this is why that's happening. That's why it's been set up there. That is a particularly hard one to kind of just do on the fly, just because there's a lot going on there with different relationships and different collections that have to happen. So yeah, maybe if you're able to reach out to me or Max, you can, I don't know if you want to arrange something there, but yeah, I'll try to get my hands on a clonable kit for you that can kind of demonstrate that for you, rather than trying to answer that on the fly, because I'll probably give you the wrong knowledge, to be honest. Like I'm a very visual person, and like if I close my eyes and I concentrate enough, maybe I might get there, but I don't want to risk it and give you the wrong information.
Yeah, well, that will be really helpful. And another question I have is regarding payments. I know that you mainly you have a component, a Stripe component for payments, but is it possible to implement another kind of payment platform? Because here in Peru, like Stripe is still not available.
Yeah, so that's a very common request. We know that we are lacking in that department. Only offering Stripe is a great solution for a lot of people, but not the best solution for many too. The answer is we don't have anything else at the moment. The other answer is that we do have Apple Pay and Google Pay in the works. I cannot give you a date on when that's exactly going to be available, but it is actually already in development. The other last solution that I can give you is that if you find a payment gateway or a payment provider that has an API, you can actually set that all up in a manual way. I mean, we won't have an integration for it for probably some time. This is also one of the things that's kind of at the top of our tutorial to-do list, is to kind of go through one of those scenarios. Like PayPal is actually very easy. It's they make it very easy to manipulate the API to make payments. There are further things that's coming out now that is actually going to complicate this process more. So things are actually going to also change by December, especially if you're based in Europe. We have a new ruling security measure that's coming out, privacy thing called PSD2, that's going to make everything a lot harder. But for the most part, a lot of the world can just mostly ignore that. But yeah, I mean, your options at the moment are to either wait for our integrations that we cannot give you a date on, or to try to tackle it as an API.
Great, thanks.
And if you somehow know somebody who is versed in React Native, they can build a component to create one of those integrations. So we have a couple of different people, like we have a guy in Russia working on a Russian payment integration. If there's a payment integration that's specific to Peru, like I said, if you know somebody who knows React Native, they could build that component theoretically. You know, we're just not the Peruvian market right now. We don't have a ton of users there, so we haven't had somebody approach us yet and say, hey, I want to build this integration that's going to work. But it is this, you know, for example, if you knew how to do React Native, you could theoretically build this ASAP. I think we're just finally getting to the point where we're realizing that we need a lot of these different integrations because Stripe doesn't cover the whole globe. So we know that, and like Colin said, we don't have a date for any of those things, but be assured that they're coming. It's just not as quick as the process.
But do you have users in Latin America? Like,
we have a lot of users in Latin America, mostly coming from Brazil.
Yeah.
Because here, what it's very popular is Mercado Pago, which is Mercado Libre, and yeah, it's like it's the main payments platform for Latin America, I'd say. So I mean, maybe for the future, you could map it out.
I think there's specifically someone based in Brazil that releases actually a lot of YouTube content for Adalo. I've forgotten his name. I don't know if you remember, Alex, but it might be worth reaching out because he's probably touched on some of these other payment gateways at some time.
Well, yeah, I'll search it.
I'll try to, I think it might be Mauricio, but yeah, if you search it, I'm sure if you search something, if you just Google it, you'd be able to find some information on that. But
and if you do get stuck, the other alternative is to actually just maybe hire an Adalo coach, like an Adalo expert that will just go through like a 30-minute to an hour coaching session. He will look at the API, or she will look at the API, and they'll be able to quickly determine like what the possibilities are there and how to do it.
Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you.
The other thing is Stripe is apparently quickly expanding into new markets. So I don't know if that'll outpace us developing these new components for these integrations, but we'll see. So
yeah, Stripe's a giant.
Yeah.
Hey everyone. I love Adalo, so I use it all the time for all of my projects and stuff. So it's cool. I'm currently working on a Venmo style app, but for mental health, which I started to build in public. But my questions are more about Adalo, which are, what are the most exciting things that you guys are working on at the moment? And then also, secondly, what's the most exciting like components that are coming up as well?
Oof, good question.
I
mean,
first, if you want me to.
yeah, you go first.
Okay. Because I talked to a lot of people on this customer, and Colin does too, but I talked to a lot of people on the customer support side who are free users. So, you know, they're just getting onto the platform, they're seeing what's all available, and, you know, they're all that kind of stuff. And the one that keeps coming up over and over again is geolocation abilities, native geolocation abilities, which we don't have yet. People ask about that all the time because, you know, everybody wants to make the next Uber app or the next Postmates app or whatever it is. And so we've kind of communicated it in our last few blog posts, but this quarter, so until the end of the year, our main focus on an engineering side is on improving the stability and performance of our platform. So we're not working on a ton of features internally, but once 2021 comes around, some of the big ones that we will be working on are geolocation. That in-app payments that Colin was talking about is actually being worked on somewhat as we speak, and that should come out in Q1 of next year. That'll be a huge one because it gets you around a lot of the problems with publishing to the Apple Store and publishing to the Google Play Store. I'm trying to think. We'll eventually have more bandwidth on third-party auth that we don't have now, which will be really cool. One of the big things that we started to work on this quarter and then kind of put aside is custom fonts. So as you guys probably all know right now, Adalo only supports one font style, and the styling is not, you know, if you knew Adalo really well, you could probably go through the App Store and see which apps are published through Adalo because it uses the same font. So that for our design team is a huge project that we'll be like diving headfirst into in Q1 of next year. Which I think will be huge. And just from an aesthetic point of view, will make us more legit, right? And that'll be awesome. So those are the ones that really come to mind for me. I guess, Colin, I don't know what your thoughts are on all that, but.
Well, I mean, I think you hit, I think you hit probably our top 4 or 5 there. Obviously, there's also, for me, and what's the most exciting for me is because I'm also, I work at Adalo, but I'm also a heavy Adalo user. Every spare minute is pretty much spent in Adalo for me. I am a maker in general too, so this is my bread and butter outside of working here. And for me, one of the most exciting things is that we're working on performance and kind of stability of the platform, which I think has also been a huge frustration and cause for concern for a lot of people. It's also prevented people from not releasing their app yet because they're worried how people might think about it. In my experience from making, don't let anything stop you from releasing it or being kind of embarrassed by something about your app. The more embarrassed you are, kind of doesn't really matter at the end of the day, because if someone likes what you've done, they're going to be willing to wait for that moment or that thing to load. Like, they don't care how it's done or what it's made in, as long as they're getting the value from what you're delivering. But this is kind of our biggest focus in Adalo at the moment, is to work on our performance problems and to bring more stability to the platform. Like we're working on bugs internally. We have 2 full-time developers just working on bugs right now. So that for me, I think is the biggest kind of feature that we're working on at the moment. And I think it's going to make the biggest difference to people that are kind of heavy users.
I'll mention one more thing that people ask about a lot, and we don't have a specific date for completion on this, but versioning of your app is another thing that we have pretty high up on the roadmap, and we hope to tackle here pretty quickly in 2021. So I assume some of you guys probably have had questions about versioning and, well, can I do this and that? Not yet, but that will be coming relatively quickly as well. So.
And what about the components? Like anyone on the horizon?
I'm trying to think of what components. So I don't know. You guys probably already saw that we just recently released horizontal lists, which was a huge request from the community, especially from like a design side. people were really excited about horizontal lists. So that's one that came out recently. That in-app purchases, but with Google and Apple, is technically a component. So that's a big one that we're working on right now, and will be coming out, sometime in the relatively near future. A lot of the components,
QR code scanner just came out. The randomizer component.
Yeah. A lot of the things we're doing right now with components too are just optimizing the components. So like the calendar, for example, we found some bugs in there that we're, optimizing, making that better performance, and also adding a couple features onto that. Trying to think. I think one of the ones that we want to do relatively in the near future is a better search component within Adalo. So it's tough to say, because a lot of those projects that we mentioned on the internal side for internal features are going to be obviously taken on by our developers, and those are all pretty big projects, so they'll be spending a lot of time on that. And then a lot of the components, as you guys already know, are developed by community partners and external kind of people. So we can't force them to develop anything that they don't want to. But those are the things that I mentioned on the component side that are already either being worked on or will be worked on soon. And then another exciting thing I'll mention is hopefully in the first quarter as well, we'll have the ability for component developers to monetize their components, which we don't right now. So that should spur a lot of innovation on that end as well. So.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep.
I think Doc had a question. So yeah, feel free to come off me, Doc.
Hey guys, thanks so much. Real quick question. This was like in one of the no code Reddit groups. They were asking about Adalo like this, and I was like, I have no idea anything about this. But they were asking about the OCR API and how to better use it in Adalo. They're working on an app. I guess they already have the app already done where they're scanning barcodes, or they're scanning something. Basically, they're checking in the refrigerator to make sure what's fresh, what's not, and then to going to a certain date. So they're scanning something. And they were asking about like how to be better with those components. And they might be here today. I invited them. But they wanted me to make sure that I asked that question.
I guess that's you, David.
That would be mine. That's what I'm working on right now. And thank you very much, Doc, for the help that you provided.
Oh, yeah, no worries.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
So to answer that question, the answer is I am not too familiar with that. I have used an OCR API before with relative success. Let's put it that way. I got more false positives than I got actual correct things. But I used a free OCR. I think it's even called free OCR API or something .org. Or I don't know what it was, but yeah, I mean it's hard to answer that. It's kind of like how long is a piece of string? Like if you can tell me like what particular things you're struggling on, maybe I can give some pointers there.
So I think that goes back to what I asked before about learning how APIs work, and kind of like you said, understanding kind of the language of it and what goes into it, and familiarizing myself with it. Mm-hmm. Like Doc said, I'm kind of working on, which took me a while to figure out, but I got the native camera to open up on the user. But I want to scan a person's grocery receipt and have it identify the items on the receipt and input them. So that's what I was.
Like on the fly, like live inside the camera? No.
Well,
so they would take a picture.
Take the picture and then use the things that it identified, the words, and put it into its own fields.
Yeah, so if it's taken a picture, then yeah, I've done that part. That's exactly the same thing that I was doing. I was trying to scan a receipt so that I could, I'm a freelancer here in the Netherlands, and I want to kind of reduce my taxes and make more money as soon as I can. So I try to scan every receipt, but I'm really bad at that kind of thing. So I try to build it in Adalo. But everything I scanned, because it was in Dutch, also didn't help because it didn't kind of recognize that. But yeah, I mean, it was working for the most part for what it was meant to be doing. It's just the results were really terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
sorry. I found a couple of OCRs and free OCR APIs. And Google has one, NanoNets, and a few that Doc recommended that I'll check out. And yeah, I guess the next step is to learn how to use them well and figure out how to retrain them better.
I try to use the Google one too. Google actually, for the most part, has really overcomplicated APIs. Well, in my experience, like those APIs are made for developers. They're not made for us to read. I still struggle with trying to map those things out. I know that IBM also has one. I think the Watson or whatever it's called also has an OCR feature. But basically what you want to be looking for is a REST API in terms of terminology. If you can find one that's REST API, they're the easiest to work with. One thing to note with APIs while I'm on the subject here is that Adalo currently does not support OAuth 2. So if the API you're using is OAuth 2, you're going to have a bad time. We also currently do not support GraphQL fully, although it's a kind of a case-by-case basis. So yeah, just those other two things to bear in mind. But on your journey to find the best API, bear in mind that if you can find something that's a REST API, that's going to be your best route.
And I just posted something in the chat here. We actually have a component request for a OCR scanner within Adalo. And if you guys want to go and upvote that obviously puts it towards the top of the list. But speaking with Ben, who's one of our co-founders and head of product about this, and I think Colin was kind of alluding to some of this, a lot of these APIs for OCRs will get you to a certain point. But eventually to have all the functionality, Adalo is probably just going to have a component or do it internally as well to get it really to the finish line. So at a certain point, we will get to that. It's just a matter of when. So.
Sounds good.
Hi, I'm Mark. Thanks very much for your time today. Congratulations on a great product. I haven't used it for quite a few months, so I might be missing a trick here. But I was wondering about offline access for apps. Is that something that's available, or is it something that's coming, and how's it been implemented?
Yeah, that's currently still not available. It's just it's obviously a really great feature, but it's a feature that most people don't need. And we are trying to really prioritize our roadmap at the moment. Like, I can't speak on behalf of kind of the product team, but I do know from internally that they are really paying attention to the stuff that in the link that Alex posted in the chat there, like the ideas.adalo.com. You can go look there and see the feature requests, and anything that's kind of at the top is what we really do pay attention to, because we know that it is mostly required by most people. There was some functionality that we do support in an offline manner, and when the app comes online, it will send that through. But it's been a bit hit and miss, so it's not something that we're promising can work at this time until we can really kind of dive in deeper and understand what the requirements are there and the kind of the use cases and build specifically for that. So yeah, unfortunately, it's not something that we can support at the moment.
Thank you very much. No worries. Cheers.
I will say as well, as we start, and I think we were kind of dancing around this a little bit earlier with the payment integrations, as we expand into more what you would just determine as like developing nations, developing countries, it seems like the offline capabilities are becoming more important. So I wouldn't be surprised if we tackle that sooner rather than later. So.
Thank you. That's great. I mean, it does depend on where you are. The app I was talking about would be used out in the field, and signal is just unreliable. And if you're transferring data over 4G, it's it can be a bit hit and miss. So I think that's obviously it is a niche thing, but I look forward to seeing something like that implemented.
Yeah. So basically, everything that's recorded in the database has to go via the internet at the moment. There's no kind of internal storage for that. That functionality just doesn't exist inside Adalo at this time.
Yeah.
Janedum, I know you're just starting out in Adalo. I wondered if you had any questions.
Yeah, I think me and Max, we were talking about this. We had a session yesterday. we were just going through it. I think for me, the payment plans was something I was really interested in. Setting up those payment plans is interesting that we talked about it right now. One thing I did want to ask, I think, if I'm correct right now, I don't think we have access to Apple Pay. Can you use Apple Pay on Adalo? I don't think you can, could you?
Yeah, so it's currently in development. We were discussing this a little bit earlier. It is being worked on, but we don't have a direct date for you on when that's going to be available. But it is currently in development.
Okay, and this is very futuristic, or maybe not so futuristic. Are there any options of using Bitcoin payments on Adalo?
So I am a bit of a crypto geek also. Well, having said that, I also just sold my entire portfolio last week. So I'm out the game now, but I still do understand all the elements of it. And the answer is yes, you can. There are a lot of things that you can do. The Coinbase has an API that is very simple to use. Kraken has an API that you can use too. There are a lot of options actually out there for this.
Okay. Is there a list of this on? Is there a list of possible other options? For example, you just mentioned with the Kraken, was it?
Yeah. So if this is going to come down to the same scenario that I was telling to David. Like if you're going to research for crypto APIs, do so with the term REST API in there. Like if you just type in crypto REST API, you're going to get a dozen results. Obviously try to go for the most well-known, because you don't want to there's a lot of shady characters out there when it comes to crypto, and you don't want to be getting involved with them. But yeah, so just bear in mind that. But yeah, I mean, that's API manipulation. That's Adalo's kind of bread and butter now that we have the custom actions, external collections, and collections API. There's not a lot that you can't do now, especially when you throw in something like Zapier or Integromat into the mix. Then you kind of have all the tools at your disposal to manipulate any API that you need to.
That's great. Thank you. Those are just two things I really wanted to get some clarity on. Appreciate that.
Sure.
I had another question for you guys. Regarding users on your app, what I'm looking to do is create a user group where one account, or like I said, it was to monitor the items in your fridge. One account would be for, let's say, a family where multiple people would be able to check in. Would each person have to either use the same email, or is there a way around that to add people?
There's definitely a way around that. So you could have a collections for, well, you have a users collections, then you can also just make like you could make a families collection, and you could have a relationship between those users and the family collection. Or alternatively, you can have just a user to user relationship. This is often something that people don't realize you can do. And I see it a lot of times when I'm helping people, is that I'll go into their app and there'll be 50 collections in there. And I'm like, what's going on? And like, oh yeah, but I needed a collection for this. And I'm like, no, you needed a relationship for that. You don't need a new collection entirely. You can do a user to user relation. You can do relationships inside the same collection over and over again. It's just, you need to rename that and give it the right cardinality. So if it's a one to many, a many to one, or a many to many, most times you're not actually going to need that extra collection.
Okay, and how do, a little unfamiliar with making a relationship like that. Is that within the users, or is there, like, how would I go about something like that?
Yeah, so you would go into the database there, the users database. You would say you want to add a new property, and you would say that's going to be a relationship, and then the relationship is going to be to the users collection again. So it's a user to user. And then we will prompt you with the cardinality options that you have, the one to many, many to one, and many to many. And what we try to do that we think is a little bit different from what other platforms offer is that we will try to write it out in human language. Like one
Definitely
user can have
appreciate
many
it.
family members, and many family members can have one user kind of thing. So we try to make it in as plain English as possible. Sometimes the automation of that does not get it right, because we also try to pluralize things that don't necessarily need to be pluralized. There's a lot of funny things that you might find in there, but yeah, it mostly, I hope, would make sense as you read it out and you think about it. Because oftentimes it could be two of those three options that you want. In which case, I would normally suggest to do it as a many-to-many, because that just gives you more freedom later. But if you watch those videos, like I was saying at the start, with the ERDs and that Lucid Charts video on an introduction to database design, they will tell you how to determine your cardinality. And it's just basically asking yourself 3 questions, and then you know which one to select.
That's great. I'll definitely check out those videos.
Cool.
Just one more question. This is probably not for any developers here or any app building, but just in general, with Adalo, I know that there is a big trend towards more no-coding platforms and all those, just the idea and movement of it. Are there any plans to take these into schools or place of education? I was based in the education sector before going to tech, but are there any plans for that or development programs?
This is the 3rd time I've heard this question asked this week. Alex, I even brought it up to your attention too this week, because this is phenomenal. Like, it's great. Everyone's doing this. Everyone wants to be in that. And I mean, from my side, I tweeted also about it, I think yesterday, after getting triggered by all these conversations, that this is where I've seen no code going for a very long time. Like, I can see that in education, like, we have such a high demand for development and such a low supply, that they're still going to offer the 4-year CS degree. And that's great, because they're going to be building the tools that we need for our 1-year degree in no code development. And we're going to be able to move 50 times faster than they are and do 50 times many things as they can. So I think, yeah, education is definitely one of the biggest routes, but I think Alex probably knows more about this than I do.
Yeah, I can speak more. So so people know, I mean, we're a startup, so I do a lot of different things, pretty much everything besides development, but I do CX, I do business development, and I do partnerships. So one of our big business development initiatives this quarter, so in the next 6 weeks, is to sketch up a strategy of how to sell to educational institutions and how to approach educational institutions. So I'm kind of in the middle of that right now, but in 2021, we will definitely be targeting and reaching out to and working with educational institutions regarding, what the best ways are to present Adalo, how do we get people engaged, and just really trying, and I think you were kind of alluding to this, is that how do we get no code into these curriculums so that children and, young adults are learning these sort of tools from an earlier age, because that really causes that stickiness to that, they're going to hold on to this for the rest of their life. So we're thinking around a lot of different things about that. It's not as straightforward as you would think. So there's a lot of different kind of things to take into account around that. But I think you'll definitely see us be more involved in educational institutions and entities going forward here in the next 6-7 months.
Yeah, the reason I say that is because a lot of my ex-colleagues in education, they're really looking to, of course, the lockdown showed us the importance of having that social awareness of technology and all of those things. So a lot of schools and a lot of federations here in the UK, a lot of them are keen into investing in things like that. So I've been thinking about it since I joined Max's community, and just ways to really push that into its education system.
Yeah, and just to be candid about it too, we would have already done it. It's just logistically a little more challenging to figure out, how to get licenses and all these things and how many accounts and all that kind of stuff, how to manage it all. So that's the sort of stuff we're working through. But we already, Colin just mentioned it. I have people from education, whether it's a university or whatever it is, asking all the time about, hey, how can I get my students involved in Adalo and blah, blah, blah. So we know it's a huge potential, place for us to be in. So we're going to spend a lot of time on that going forward.
It's also very fundamental to our company's purpose. Like our purpose, we've been talking about this internally this week, actually quite a lot. And our purpose in one sentence is to empower makers to bring their ideas to life. And I think there's no better way than to start with the young minds to do that. So it's something that's really really fundamental to our company's goals. So yeah.
Great, thanks.
Well, we appreciate you guys. I know Colin has to run and get dinner. Either get dinner.
Am I the
go.
only European here, or?
Well, no,
Okay.
Yeah, a couple people in the UK. So,
Okay.
but and I have to jump on another call here. But if you guys have, I know Max offered up, or Colin offered up his assistance. If you guys want to reach out to him directly, I don't know if Colin, you want to give your email, or you think it's just best for people to reach out to you on the forum.
Yeah, I think it's always, I would always appreciate it if you came into the forum and made a public post about it, because then I can answer it publicly, and that answer is probably going to benefit other people. So if you can do it that way, I would very much appreciate it. If you do need to reach out to me personally, you can do so also on the forum. You can send me a direct message. I see that Max, you also posted my Twitter there. Of course, that's my personal Twitter, but I don't mind. So if you want to reach out on Twitter too, that's perfectly fine by me. But yeah, happy to help out where I can, when I can, and yeah, hope that you guys see your success in Adalo.
Yeah, we're glad that you guys are going through this whole process to learn more about no code and Adalo specifically. So we really, you know, we appreciate it. And like Colin said, we're here to help. So Colin's definitely the most active of our Adalo employees on the forum, but we're all always checking in there. He's kind of the forum czar, if you want to call it that. So, but yeah, we appreciate you guys, and you know, best of luck with your Adalo builds, and let us know if we can help.
Cheers, guys. Yeah, have a good evening.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.